Still here, we're marking lots of fish, but to get them to bite has been the biggest challenge.
Like yesterday, they bit good, and then this front come in. Today, it just pretty much shut down.
Well, that's the way things went across much of the North Country last winter. Fact is, weather fronts have a lot more impact during the winter than in the summer. Just ahead on today's show, fronts and how to deal with them.
You know, I think everybody agrees that cold fronts have a big impact on fishing. Summer, but even more so in winter. Hello, everybody. I'm Tony Dean, and on today's show, we're going to explore weather. Specifically, we're going to look back to the winter of 2000-2001, maybe the toughest year for ice fishing success on record. Stay where you're at. We're going to do it all just ahead. Oh, yes, weather has a huge impact on fish, but it has much more of an impact during the winter months than in the summer months. I think there's reasons for it. Fish are cold-blooded creatures, which means their metabolism rises and falls with water temperature. So what you're dealing with in the winter is a fish that doesn't feed as often as it does in the summer months. And then you add the impact of a cold front on top of that situation. Now you can see why fish can really get a case of lockjaw. But not all fish are affected the same. Probably the fish that are affected the most are panfish, yellow perch. We're on Devil's Lake, and today you're going to meet the members of the Perch Patrol Guide Service. We're going to get some ideas from them. First, we'll learn from them how weather affected their efforts this year. But then we're also going to learn what really competent ice fishermen do when things really get tough. Devil's Lake in east central North Dakota has a well-deserved reputation as a perch mecca, an ice fishing mecca, period. We traveled there in March of last year, late March, toward the late ice period. A little bit early, but it was an unusual winter. Well, after the first few hours on the ice, we discovered what we had feared: cold front city.
The fish are still here, we're marking lots of fish, but to get them to bite has been the biggest challenge that faced us in the year 2001. One of the things that we've done as a guide service here at Devil's Lake is to fish other species when that happens, and thank God we've got a fishery that can have trophy walleye and trophy northern pike, and we've saved a lot of trips because of it.
Yesterday, they bit good, and then this front come in. Today, it just pretty much shut down.
Perch have got to be affected the most. Walleyes get affected too, and it seems like the bigger the walleyes, the more it seems a lot of times. And the pike probably the least, but even the pike, you know, it'll change things. But usually though, the smallest pike, it seems like, or if you had them on a scale, the perch would be definitely the most, and the walleyes and the small pike would probably be the fish most least affected. But yeah, the panfish, the perch, it really shuts them down, it seems like, when things change.
Well, not many techniques work much better on northern pike than tip-ups. It's a totally vertical presentation. And while live bait works, dead bait, such as frozen smelt, usually works a lot better. I suspect the scent is important when you're pike fishing, and maybe that's why the dead bait does work so well. Now, you don't have to set the hook hard, especially if you're using a quick strike rig, nor is it necessary to let the fish run very far. In fact, you can set the hook with a quick strike rig as soon as the fish takes on. You could also call it the foolproof pike rig.
He really took it. Nice eating sized fish.
The terrific northern pike and walleye populations in Devil's Lake are a couple of the things that really tend to set this great fishery apart from other outstanding perch fisheries. In fact, you can usually count on one or both of those species to save the day on a tough bite.
So with a batch of tip-ups out there to waylay roaming northern pike, we tip our spoons with minnow heads and jig for walleyes.
Nice job. Nice eater.
You got him, Jim?
Nice walleye.
Oh, walleye.
Eel, dog.
Walleye.
Just came in and smacked her. Another nice eater. Little one, I guess.
Jim, flag up. Probably a school of walleyes going through. Yep, school of walleyes going through. Where did he take that one?
Pretty close to the same size. These are males.
Still following a front, you can usually count on pike to provide action. And it's hard to beat that dead bait fished on the tip-up. That's one of the beauties of fishing a lake that offers multi-species, as Devil's Lake does. But don't make the mistake of believing that pike aren't good-eating fish. You learn to fillet them to get rid of the bones. And by the way, we'll have a segment on how to do that this season. You may agree with me when I say that pike may be the best tasting of all the fish we go well back. And I want you to meet Bucky, the wonder ice fishing dog. Jason Mitchell of the Perch Patrol belongs to Bucky. And if there's a walleye laying next to an ice hole anywhere, Bucky owns it and brings it to Jason. We're on Devil's Lake on the day following the passage of another cold front, something that seemed to happen on an every other day basis all last winter. Yet usually if you fish slowly and vertically, if you're on fish, you can generally take a few. Ed Samuelson was fishing a small minnow under a float, and sometimes that's a technique that works when nothing else will. And while Ed was catching his walleye, Bucky the Wonder Dog was stealing Ed's bag of frozen smelt, dutifully delivering it to Jason.
There we go. I got a tangled mess here.
And while I was dealing with the tangle, Bucky the Wonder Dog, once again, an ice fishing retriever if there ever was one, ran off with my only walleye. Dave Tronson, a member of the Perch Patrol Guide Service, is recognized as one of the best winter perch fishermen anywhere, and he uses a special presentation technique when the bite is particularly tough.
Vibrate your rod about 1.5 feet off the bottom with a small jig, and if the mark comes up, then you know it's a fish that's looking at it. And then drop it slowly down and put it right in front of their nose and hold it there. And maybe don't even lift it 1/2 inch or so. And then if they'll take it, then you're going to get them.
You really have to pay attention to what you're doing, and boy, concentration is a key factor. Watching your Vexilar. These fish are so tight to the bottom. You got to have that rod in your hand, and you got to be jig, 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 and don't stop jigging until you attract that fish, and then it's time to slow down your presentation. And a lot of times they'll come right up to your lure on the Vexilar and they still won't hit, and it's almost like a stalemate game. Then it's time to give them the little shakes or the ever so slightly the little twitches. And sometimes it works, sometimes they go back down and you start all over again with trying to attract them. It's important to remember the aggressive jigging is just to attract them into your cone angle on your Vexilar and close to your jig. And once you start marking them, then it's time to really slow things down. And a lot of times too, in contrast to that, the slip bobbers were working pretty good too this year with a plain old hook and a minnow.
No question about it, more than any other factor, weather determines what fish are going to be doing. The methods you have to use to catch them. Now, there are some ways to cope with weather. You've heard about some of them on the show. But one thing I did notice today, with all of us out here fishing, most of the best fish came on very simple presentations. And most of the best fish came on tip-ups today. Fish weren't very active. Tip-ups aren't very active either. That's about as slow and vertically as you can fish. So kind of carry those ideas to the bank. They may help you solve some problems, but you aren't going to beat weather. All you can do is learn to cope with it. I'm Tony Dean. Thanks for being with us.